Good evening and welcome to Montgomery County Media's primary election coverage. I'm Kristen Wright. For the next few hours, we're going to bring you up to date on tonight's election results and talk with a group of local political insiders, bloggers, and politicians about today's historic election. So on your screen, you're going to see various live feeds from several campaign headquarters around the county. Notably, we have crews with two of the county executive campaigns, David Blair and Mark Ehrlich, and also with two county council election night headquarters this evening, Sidney Katz and Hans Reamer. So a lot of exciting things to talk about this evening. With me tonight from MCM's weekly political talk show, 21 this week, is commentator Susan Heltemus. And Susan is going to be with us throughout tonight's broadcast. And we're also going to be joined by a variety of local political insiders with journalists and politicians. So we're going to begin tonight with local journalist and founder and editor of Germantown Pulse. To my right here, Kevin O'Rourke. Thanks for being with us this evening. And also here with us now is former State Assistant Secretary for Business and Economic Development, Bill Ashkenazi. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us on this very important election night in Montgomery County. We want to start with just the crowded fields of candidates we have really across several races, notably with county council and with the county executive race. That's a lot of people. I mean, I'm driving around the past few days, you just see, I was thinking of all the names that you see on all the signs. It's a lot of candidates. It's a lot for people to decide. How do you think things could play out because of that tonight?
I think before we preface anything, Bill is a longtime Republican activist, but those crowded races were all on the Democratic side. The Republicans didn't have a primary today. I mean, they could have stayed home. So it makes a difference.
Well, I think you have a lot of candidates because, in part, because there's a new renewed interest in the political process. You have new segments of the populace coming to the polls: women, Asian Americans, Hispanics, people of color.
Public financing.
Right. So there's an opportunity now. Everybody wants a say, and that's a healthy thing. The flip of that is that if you're a candidate in a crowded field, and we're talking a dozen or so candidates, you could win with a very, very small percentage because you've locked up your church or you're the community leader for a little area, but you're not really the people's candidate. You've hit the right tone at the right stride. And there's in that, I don't know, that's democracy, but is it democracy when you have such a narrow choice?
With 33 candidates on the Democratic side alone for the at-large seats, there's going to be you're going to steal votes from other people because I remember serving with him on the PTA, or you're going to know people, and they're going to steal votes that maybe you would have gone to other people that should have gone to. With this many people, there's going to be a situation where you're going to have the difference between the four winners and the first loser, if you will, is going to be probably less than 100 votes.
If Mark Ehrlich locks up union endorsements, which he has, I think.
Yes.
Now that alone could propel him to win the election.
Right. It's interesting, right?
He also, and I should add, in the case of Mark Ehrlich, he has what some have said is every NIMBY group in the county is behind Mark Ehrlich. And Mark Ehrlich had made the comment, too, which is a part of the issue, is development. You would have thought in 2018 that wouldn't be an issue. And Mark Ehrlich had to backtrack a comment that he said he was talking about transportation and other infrastructure, and he said, let the jobs go to Frederick. We don't need them. And it was like, whoa. I mean, there is a vast difference there.
Well, certainly in the Up County, I'm Germantown. I cover Germantown, Clarksburg, and there are not enough jobs in Germantown. Everybody who lives in the Up County has to go someplace else. If we had jobs in the Up County, traffic wouldn't be so bad in the Up County, wouldn't be so bad in the whole county. But until the jobs come to the Up County, it's going to be, and if we're going to go to Frederick, that doesn't help anybody.
And the irony is that there are 27,000 job openings in the county approximately that people are not theoretically applying for or skilled for.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but
it is
in
a lot of
reality-
jobs when you think about it.
Yeah.
But I do think that the vast numbers, I spent the whole day at the poll, and people were confused about the number, and people were actually talking about two specific candidates and about candidates. And I can say at the poll where I was located, when I went in to like get a glass of water for the hot day, people were sitting and poring over all the literature.
Yeah, because there are so many. And I want to mention, too, that we just found out, all of us together right before the show, that we are not going to get election results as soon as we thought, because there are some problems. You know, with every election, there's always something that comes up, but there are some issues in Baltimore City, and 3 precincts there have been ordered by a court to stay open until 9, so until just a few minutes ago, because of some sort of problems. I saw on Twitter, perhaps it has something to do with a mice and flea infestation,
perhaps in one.
Unfortunately, at one of the polling sites. So we'll keep our eye on that, and then we expect we'll get some results here, hopefully in a little bit. But with the crowded fields, and we talk about Up County and the jobs. Susan, you also mentioned the importance of the Up County in the county council
because right
race.
now, 3 of the at-large, Hans Riemer, Mark Elridge, and George Leventhal, are from Tacoma Park, Silver Spring area, plus Tom Hucker, the district representative there, is from Silver Spring. So that's 4 out of 9 seats. And, Up County rightfully is concerned about that.
Absolutely.
But it also has to do with the mother load of votes in Democratic primaries are below the beltway in districts 16, 18, and 20.
Right.
Yeah. So you are urging your readers to do something.
Right. I did an editorial this week urging the Up County to vote, specifically because I said this is the most important election for the Germantown area in the history of ever, because it really is. The opportunity for the Germantown area and the Up County to make and have a real impact on the future of the county is now. It may never happen again this way.
But isn't that also an argument for redistricting? We'll bring back that R word again. Redistricting is so critical to the fairness of who gets elected. I mean, shifting to the congressional districts and the realignment of District 8 and District 6, what is a farmer, an agrarian culture in west of Hagerstown really have different interests than somebody who's in suburban Maryland, both in terms of taxes, in terms of, but they have the same representative.
Yeah.
So the lines have been redrawn to the point where perhaps, the Germantown area may have you're more of a commuter district.
They do have a district like that already. The issue is the voters in Montgomery County, as you recall, voted when the council was expanded to have 5 by district and 4 at large, so it wouldn't be parochial, because if you had 9 at large, it would be so parochial you wouldn't get a darn thing done. So the bottom line is that there are those districts that represent more, but voters aren't as likely to vote. Plus, there are less Democratic voters up county. That is purely because of, I can't say why, but there are more Democratic voters down county.
There are definitely more Democratic voters down county. There's more people to a certain extent down county,
Right.
but that's changing. I mean, Clarksburg's growing really big. Germantown continues to grow. As I said, the research that I did, we talked about a little bit before we came on, was that in the last primary, which was in the last non-presidential primary, 2014 non-presidential primary, so the same primary as this, an off-year primary, there were a total of 68,000 Democratic voters in the county who voted in that
Something
election.
like, what's it, 14, 17%?
About 14%.
Yeah.
And then the research that I did, I found that there was 55,000 Democratic voters in the Up County, if you I kind of took the districts and did the math. Now there's going to be hopefully there's a bigger turnout this year than there was 4 years ago.
If early voting is any indicator, there was a 95% increase in early Democratic voting.
And that's great. And hopefully that continues, and hopefully for my interest and my readers' interest that the up county turns out.
Now, how many up county voters? How many candidates in the council race do you consider up county candidates?
There are 5 up county candidates from the Germantown, Damascus area. Then there are 3 or 4 more from Olney, Gaithersburg, Goshen.
And now, of those, you've mentioned 8 or 9 now, which is a little less than a third of all the candidates. Do any of them, do you think, have a fighting chance to get through?
I think Marilyn Balcom definitely has a chance. I hope she does. She's done great work as the president of the Chamber of Commerce for Germantown, Gaithersburg. Beyond that, I don't know. I would love to see Rosemary Corian come out of that. She's certainly active. She's been at every meeting that I have been to in the last 2 years.
But how much?
And her name starts with A.
She's top of the. She's top.
No, Albornoz is ahead of her.
But she's
near
close
the
to the top,
and she's a woman.
How much value does hometown play in a person's decision to vote for somebody? So in other words, if somebody's from Germantown, doesn't necessarily mean they're representing Germantown values per se.
Not when running at large. They're supposed to represent the whole county.
Hopefully they will. I mean, you don't want someone just to be the Germantown candidate, but you would hope that. We would hope that as a person from up county, from Germantown, that we would get a little more. At least the impression would be that there would be more say in what.
We'll have greater insight.
Have greater insight as to our lives.
Sensitivity to
up and
the irony is that
we need to. We're going to take a break soon. This conversation is great. It's hard to stop it. But I want to remind everybody before we go to break that we're still waiting on those election results. There's some glitches in Baltimore. We're going to be right back.
This election year, Montgomery County encourages all residents from all walks of life to come out and vote.
Je vote.
I vote.
मैं मतदान देता हूँ.
أنا أعطي صوتي.
मैं वोट डालूँ.
Please check these dates for early voting and the general election.
Yo voto.
我投票.
I vote.
We encourage everyone to come out and vote.
I vote.
I felt the bite at age 16.
I felt the bite at age 4.
We've all felt the bite of Montgomery tooth, and we are fighting back.
Charcot-Marie tooth is the most commonly inherited nerve disease. If you or a loved one has CMT, go to cmtausa.org and help take a bite out of CMT.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be blood. Next Thursday?
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day. I have no time for this. So.
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
MCM, your community media center, is making Montgomery County a great place to live through programs like 21 This Week. Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show keeps you up to date with the local political scene. Montgomery Community Media. Our middle name is Community.
You're watching Montgomery Community Television's live primary election night coverage. I am your host tonight, Kristen Wright. Thanks so much for being with us and joining us this evening with some very special insights into tonight's results are Susan Haltemes of MCM's 21 This Week, Kevin O'Rourke here to my right. He is founder and editor of Germantown Pulse. And beside Kevin, we have former State Assistant Secretary for Business and Economic Development, Bill Ashkenazi.
That's good.
I finally got it. So we left off talking up County, and Susan, you were mid-thought.
Yes, what I was going to say is the irony is that Marilyn Balcom was running a couple of years ago for the seat that Craig Rice has, and she had some health issues and had to drop out. And so that was her big chance, you know, and now she's waited low these many years. And, you know, because of the redistricting, all those seats came up, and you alluded to this earlier. You know, there are all these vacancies on the council with Leventhal and Roger Berliner and Mark Elrich running for county executive and Nancy Florine stepping down. This was the mother lode of seats.
Sure.
And combined with public financing, you brought this up, Bill, about is it really experience or is it money or what's bringing these people? Clearly, some people are getting their feet wet and thinking maybe next time. But, you know, it's a very once-in-a-lifetime election.
Sure.
Yeah, what's that public financing? What is the impact of that? I mean, that really opens the door for many people.
Yeah, it allows you to run, and if you get enough signatures to and enough support, enough donations to begin with, then you qualify for it, and then the county is kicked in up to $11 million, I think.
And I've been told it's going to be far less than that.
It's not going to be, but you know, there are folks who like it, folks who don't. I know personally, I'm not a fan of it, but I think it's good for a situation where you can have a first-time candidate get their feet wet and get people involved.
And it's interesting because you had until a couple of weeks or a week or so before the primary to qualify to be in it. And what happened is that Robin Ficker, the Republican county executive candidate, thought he had until the general, so he did not qualify for public financing. And it was interesting towards the end that a fair number of candidates didn't meet the goal in terms of number of contributors that they had to have. For instance, on the county-wide races, the most you could give is $150. So for people who give smaller amounts, this is really interesting, but people who are against public financing feel that there is a better use of our dollars and that should they really be used to run.
I think there's also a lot of other factors why so many candidates have come out. A lot of it, you know, from the Me Too movement to empowering, you know, the millennials to, frankly, the divisiveness on the national level has fragmented different groups. There's no such thing as a traditional Republican anymore. There's no such thing as a traditional Democrat anymore. You know, you've got the Bernie Sanders Democrats, you've got the Hillary Democrats, you've got, you know, all spectrums of liberalism, and then you got on the conservative movement all spectrums. I think that's bringing out people to voice their own views in their own way, and they have a platform to do that. So we're seeing that on a lower level here in the county elections, the local elections. I think it's a good thing. It's fleshing people out, it's being part of the system. But then again, you know, what will happen? You know, will we be able to govern, I think, with a two-party system? Moving forward, I don't think we will.
No, let me just real quick. We have some election results.
Oh,
do everybody? Yes. So those are on your screen. These are coming in for the county executive race. We have Mark Elrich on top with 29% of the vote. David Blair closely behind, 27%. Rose Krasnow, 15%, who, Susan, you were speaking about. Maybe we can talk about that yesterday.
Yeah.
And then we have Roger Berliner there at 13%. So
the three that I think are on top were the three I would have expected.
Yes.
But it is interesting that two council people Roger Berliner and George Leventhal aren't there.
Well, do we know where this came from?
That's countywide. That's coming from the Board of Elections,
And
right?
what percent?
I believe so.
Has come in so far?
That isn't on there.
That I can't tell you. That I don't know. And I want to talk more about these early results soon, but we went out and talked to voters earlier today, and we went to various polling places just to get some insight into what people are thinking. We asked people to share their comments with us, and we're going to be sharing those with everyone throughout this broadcast. And in the first one we want to show you, we talked to voters from different generations to express their views about what's important now and in the future of Montgomery County. So take a listen.
My name is Elizabeth Sugar, and I'm from Kensington. Voting is important to me, especially for this election, because it's the first one that I'm eligible for, because I feel that my generation especially hasn't had the chance like this to make their opinions known in an official sense. So it's important, especially to me and people my age, because it's a chance to make our opinions known. There are a couple issues that are important to me. One of them, like it is for a lot of people my age, is gun legislation and making sure that we can get common sense gun laws and the ban on assault weapons and things like that we already have in Maryland, but improving upon that. Also, as a former Montgomery County Public Schools student, education is important to me, and making sure our schools are funded and that the money isn't going to waste in programs that we don't need, but that the programs that we do need for students in the county are fully funded. I think that the county's future is in a good place. I think that we have a lot of really good and really qualified candidates, and I think that especially if the candidates that I support make it through, that we will be in a very good place.
My name is Marie Kaplan, and I'm from Kensington. I'm a Democrat, and I'm proud to say that. So the most important issue for me was getting out to vote and to have the Democratic presence felt in the polls today. But also, I suppose locally, the most important issue is, well, I want to age in place in Montgomery County. So that's an important issue for me, but I know that in order for our growing elderly population to age in place, we need a vibrant economy that attracts young people and attracts jobs to our area to support our elderly population. Also, I am very proud of Montgomery County being a diverse population, and I would like to see that grow.
So we just heard from a new young voter and then a voter who wants to spend, the rest of her days here in Montgomery County. So we've talked a lot about the diversity within the county. There are so many, different age groups, and there's so many people constantly moving into the county too. It's constantly changing. Do you think that younger voters and older voters in Montgomery County share common ground going into this?
Well, I must say that in terms of the diversity of the candidates this year, if we'd stick to just the 33 running for county council, is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Asian, Latino, African American, young, old.
Yeah.
I mean, it is truly a United Nations of candidates.
Sure, it really is.
And it reflects Montgomery County.
Very well, it does.
And so on this topic about who wins or loses is, you talked about money is a big factor. Like if you have lots of money, it always, greases the skids. The other thing that you had mentioned, Bill, is people who have worked their way up and earned their place at the table, and those who are young Turks, so to speak, and and how that's going to play this race. An example is the Sidney Katz race. His opponent is 27 years old, and Mr. Katz is a senior citizen, former mayor of Gaithersburg, and around a long time. And so that is an example. And also on the county, there are some really young people. And the person you mentioned, Rosemary, is definitely a senior citizen. Sure. And Maryland is well into middle age. So it will be interesting watching these results.
It's also interesting the effect of money in someone's face. I mean, to spend $10 million on a congressional race, I think David Trone is maybe setting a record for this. a lot of ordinary voters feel put off by that.
Well, but when we look at the county exec race, David Blair is there.
Yes.
And on the county council races, I don't think there's anyone who has really gone hog wild in the at-large race in terms of money. There's a lot of public finance people there.
Yeah, but my point was that how does the average voter feel about the exorbitant amounts of money that are thrown in an election to buy airtime?
Do you know, I had a fascinating conversation with Bruce Adams. For those who don't remember Bruce anymore, he was a longtime county council person. And he was the one who injected large sums of money. He was the first one who spent a lot of money running for the county council. But Bruce and I had a conversation about this issue of money, and I said, I think this is ludicrous. It's putting it beyond the realm of some people to hold office. And he said, Susan, it's great that you and I might feel that way, but he said the average voter out there is pleased that they see the ads on TV and they learn about their candidates. And he said, I don't think there are very many voters who really care.
Yeah, well,
and I wonder how it all plays out in this particular election cycle with so many candidates. And as you mentioned, when you went out to a polling site, people were kind of confused about the candidates because there are so many. It's hard to know who you know align with. And so I think those who are able to get the name recognition, David Blair.
Well, the Washington Post endorsements in this particular election, I think, are more important than they were in previous elections. Because for the average voter who really looks at the voter guide and then...
Well, at large, the Washington Post endorsed Marilyn Balcom. You had a woman, Evan Glass, a gay activist, Hans Riemer, an incumbent, and Gabe Albornoz.
And I thought Andrew on the other, Andrew...
No, but for it was Glass, Riemer, Balcom, and Albornoz. So it was it was a very interesting selection.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much. Time goes so quickly, doesn't it? But we definitely want to thank Kevin O'Rourke for being with us tonight, founder again and editor of Germantown Pulse, as well as Bill Askenazi, former State Assistant Secretary for Business and Economic Development. Thank you so much for joining us. Very insightful. We appreciate everything, your perspective.
And I'm waiting for your next edition to see what you say about the results up county.
It should be interesting.
Yes.
I'm waiting too. I think we all are, right?
We'll look out for that. Okay, so we're going to take a little break right now, and then when we come back, we're going to be joined by a pair of local media creators who do a lot of important reporting on Montgomery County, so stay with us.
MCM, your community media center, is making Montgomery County a great place to live through programs like Montgomery Arts Infusion. Host Michael Bobbitt shows you the art and the artists who make Montgomery County unique. Montgomery Community Media. Our middle name is community.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Getting that college education, what are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else? Or will you dare do something different? Like be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills. The smarts? Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget. That'd be cool. Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself? What are you gonna make of me? Testing. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
This election year, Montgomery County encourages all residents from all walks of life to come out and vote.
Je vote.
I vote.
मैं मतदान देता हूँ.
أنا أعطي صوتي.
ما بوت حالته.
Please check these dates for early voting and the general election.
Yo voto.
我投票.
I vote.
We encourage everyone to come out and vote.
I vote.
Welcome back, everybody, to MCM's primary election coverage. I'm Kristen Wright. We want to get straight to some results that we have. They're starting to come in for the county executive race. We're going to start with that. Let's take a look here on your screen. You can see this is the county executive race. Mark Elridge, oh, it's a close one, right at the top there. And David Blair, both with 28%. Followed by Rose Krasnow, 15%, Roger Berliner right behind Rose at 14%, George Leventhal and Bill Frick down at the bottom with 3% of the vote. So, oh, we have more. County Council at large, and we know that there are a lot of candidates, I think 33 candidates in the County Council race. So we have Hans Riemer at the top here at 13%. Followed by Will Jawando at 10%, so close here. And Evan Glass down at 9%, and then Gabe Albanos, head of the county recreation department there at 8%, so very close. Yeah, I won't go through all the names because there are so many candidates, but take a look here, and these are the candidates down at the bottom at this point. Again, results still coming in, so. Board of Education at large, another crowded field. Julie Riley at the top there at 32%, Carlos Silvestri at 30%, John Robertson, excuse me, at 11%. And you can take a look there at the other names. So results finally starting to come in, and welcome back again. We're here tonight again with MCM political commentator Susan Heldemus. I always say your name wrong. Heldemus. And now we have two new panelists. Welcome, guys. And both of you certainly have your finger on the pulse of the county. So we want to welcome freelance writer and Up the Pike blogger Dan Reed with us tonight, and founder of the MoCo Show and web and social media platforms, Alex Soronis. So gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
What do you make of what we see so far?
Woo.
Either one of you.
Yeah, I think we're right where we expected to be with David Blair and Mark Elridge right at the top. I didn't think it would be a tie right now.
Yeah.
It's both at 28%, I believe. But you know, this is what was expected. So we're gonna know, I guess, in the next hour or so what's gonna happen.
No, we're not.
So we're not.
We're not. No. First, I think this is why I don't think we'll know. One, there are a lot of absentee ballots. Two, we don't know yet what the divide will be for the 80,000 ballots that were mishandled by the Department of Motor Vehicles. So depending on the provisional ballots, which those people were asked to vote today, it could make a big difference. I think the biggest takeaway from this is Rose Krasnow, number 3. Yeah. Rose, one, obviously is the only woman, but two, she entered the race really late in December. Had she entered sooner and had the time to get it going, I think she would be up even higher. And what is really amazing is that George and Bill Frick, the state delegate, are at the bottom with 3. George has been around a long time, and that to me is just amazing.
What do you think that says? I mean, how do you explain that?
I've always talked a lot about how these elections are often really about relationships. You know, people have endorsements and people have their issues that they may prefer one candidate over another, but a lot of it comes down to relationships. You know, your interactions with that person as an elected official and the time you've spent in that position make a huge difference. So these results are really surprising to see. You know, George has been an at-large council member for the longest of the 3 council members who are running in this race.
I think it's 16 years.
16 years. So it is pretty shocking. But it also does speak to Rose Krasnow's long and deep relationship with the city of Rockville and the base that she's built there, as well as her time in the planning department, where I think she was able to sort of break bread with a lot of people across different sectors of the county.
And some would say she is the most qualified because she had the executive experience in the city of Rockville. And before she came to Montgomery County, she was a bond trader in New York for 4 years. So she has that experience plus the executive experience that the mayor brought to us, the town center, fought the county executive, got the Rockville Library She's the one who annexed the King Farm under her term. And she was known as someone working collegially, and she's incredibly smart. Now, depending on what happens, and this is most interesting, if Rose doesn't win, and if these aren't any indication, she's not going to win, and if Pete Fusselman and Meredith Wellington both lose in District 1, because of Nancy Florine's departure, there will be no one in the exec's office or the county council who have planning experience. And that is going to be devastating.
Well, that brings us to, I think, term limits and you know, what happened in Montgomery County Council with that. I mean, don't you think that that is notable and the reason for what we're seeing in part?
Be a huge amount of institutional memory loss when the current council departs in December, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, how the new council gets along with each other, with the new executive, and what kind of culture will develop from that. You know, this election is in many ways a generational one. You know, the last one I would say was in '06 with Ike Leggett, and before that with Doug Duncan, and it really will set the tone for the next decade, at least, of politics in the county and how everything happens in the different agencies and sort of the tone of the conversation that we have. And it'll be, and I think it really comes from the top, and it'll be interesting to see how these different executive frontrunners with very different, I think, governing approaches and very different tones that they have set with their campaigns would actually lead in office.
And do you know what I find intriguing about this matchup is that Mark Elridge has the political experience being on the county council, but never once was the president of the council, has no executive experience. There is David Blair, someone have questioned his business dealings. He may have executive experience, but has no political experience, has the bucks, and was a Republican. His father ran as for the U.S. Senate as a Republican. He switched parties, but has an abysmal voting rate, and said, well, I could have done better. So we have two people who don't, and that's where Rose Krasna came in. This is going to be like batten down the hatches.
Absolutely. I'm actually surprised that that David is as close as he is this early. I thought the early voting would have favored Mark for sure.
Yeah.
Only because, you know, he's the one that's been in there.
Except the dollar spent.
Yes. Well, that's what I wonder too. I mean, I know in my home personally, mailings from David Blair were, you know, are a daily occurrence.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember watching my daughters watch a lot of YouTube kids videos on the YouTube Kids channel. There was a David Blair ad that popped up on there.
And you know, I came home to change clothes before I came here after being at the polls all day. My neighbor had a David Blair hanger on their door. So you know that they were out and about today,
even
working on
Absolutely.
people.
I have seen David Blair shirts at the gym. I have I've had my friends jokingly text me, brought to you by friends of David Blair, because they've seen it so much on social media. And you know, I have students that I've taught in the past that are working for David Blair, and he's gotten his name.
Yeah,
he's gotten his name out
$15 an hour.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the overwhelming. I was at the Lawton Center the last night, and candidates were scurrying to get their signs. There were 5 or 6 people picking up David Blair signs, and
whoa! Last night?
No, at early voting last Thursday.
Okay.
And the number of signs at just one of the precinct was, "This is a well-funded campaign."
It certainly
Sure
is.
is.
It really is. Speaking of, I want to tell you we have live cameras tonight at David Blair's headquarters, and also with Mark Elridge. So it's going to be some excitement, I think, going down at both of those places tonight.
Maybe not so much if we don't have all the votes.
Well, yes, but just the closeness of the. I mean, it's so interesting, and you know, as you mentioned, I'm sure some people find it unexpected.
Absolutely. And you know, on another note, even if you were to look into both camps here, you'd see the difference between the two. And David Blair's looks like a pretty nice reception there, whereas
it's a wedding I would like to go to.
Absolutely. That is a wedding I'd like to attend.
Yeah. And so just seeing that we have the Cats headquarters there, That is going to be the real test of the millennial versus the.
Oh yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I do think Sydney's going to come out on top.
You do.
But I think Ben has made a name for himself. Absolutely made a name for himself in the county.
It'll be a real test to see how far the union's endorsements go, especially the Apple ballot. I mean, the Apple ballot has been influential for a long time, but you could argue their influence has waned in the past couple of years. There have been a number of candidates in 14 and 16 who didn't get the Apple ballot and
Do
still
you
won.
want to know what's interesting about the Apple ballot? The Apple ballot is worthless if there is nobody to pass it out. And if it's during the school year, teachers have a day off and they haven't been showing up like in the past. Today, however, school is out, they've had some time off, and they were there at a poll I was at. They had 3 and 4 people at a time.
Where were you?
At Leisure World. I spent my day at Leisure World, and they had people there all day long. And so teachers are out, it makes a difference. And I think there was some concern that they might have escaped town. I think that they didn't do that and that they were there. And so the Apple ballot is good if someone hands you the Apple ballot. They also had teachers that said, vote 2018 for kids.
The Apple ballot didn't seem to make as much of an impact on the at-large race, though. I mean, it's Chris and Brandy aren't there in the top 4 yet.
They're not.
They were on the Apple ballot.
They had no money.
No.
They had no money.
Back to money again. We keep coming back to that.
And they formed an alliance very close to the end of the race. But I think Wilhelm has a problem in that he was at the bottom of the ballot. You know?
Of 33 people,
long ballot.
That's a long ballot.
That is a very long ballot. And I think that his name was his enemy. And if you'll recall, Phil Andrews changed his name from Phil Levchenko to Phil Andrews so that he would be closer to the top of the ballot. I always told him, I said, Phil, you should have gone the whole way and became Aaron Aardvark because no one would beat you. But he did. He went to Andrews. So you see him with his brother who works for the county council. They look, it's like seeing, the same image. One is Levchenko and the other is Andrews, and therein lies the story of Phil Andrews.
We have to go to break. Thank you. We're going to talk more when we get back. We're going to talk more about the long ballot, and also we're going to hear from Hans Riemer. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
This election year, Montgomery County encourages all residents from all walks of life to come out and vote.
Je vote.
I vote.
मैं मतदान देता हूँ.
أنا أعطي صوتي.
ما بوت حالته.
Please check these dates for early voting and the general election.
Yo voto.
我投票.
I vote.
We encourage everyone to come out and vote.
I vote.
I felt the bite at age 16.
I felt the bite at age 28.
I felt the bite at age 4.
I felt the bite at age 13.
We've all felt the bite of Charcot-Marie-Tooth, and we are fighting back.
Charcot-Marie-Tooth is the most commonly inherited nerve disease. It affects the hands, arms, feet, and legs of approximately 1 in 2,500 people in the United States. If you or a loved one has CMT, find out about the latest research and educational tools that can enhance your life or the lives of the ones you love. Go to cmtausa.org and help take a bite out of CMT.
MCM, your community media center, is making Montgomery County a great place to live through programs like Manage Your Damn Money. Malcolm and Ben teach us how to save money and reach our personal financial goals. Montgomery Community Media. Our middle name is Community.
welcome back. So, again tonight we are have two special panelists with me and Susan this evening, and Susan is MCM political commentator Susan Heltemes, and we have Up the Pike blogger Dan Reed with us, as well as the founder of the MoCo show, Alex Saronis. So Dan and Alex, thank you so much for being with us. We want to take a quick look at some new results we have from the County Council at Large race in Montgomery County, and we know there are many, many candidates to go through, but let's just look at the top few here. Hans Riemer on top with 13% of the vote. Will Jawando, 10% here. Evan Glass, 8%, tied with Gabe Albornoz, also at 8% there. And I think we have more results we want to show you.
Maryland
We've been looking at county executive.
1 point behind.
Yeah. Maryland is close, and Brandy's right behind her, and I do hope one of them are able to get in there.
Solly is not pulling through, though.
No, he's not. Yeah. Solly is not.
So speaking of Hans Riemer, we, MCM, talked with him just a few minutes ago, and we want to tell you what he had to say. Take a listen.
I was happy for the county to know that almost whatever happened, we were going to end up with really good people at the council, and so that was good.
Okay, so I think we might have more, possibly later, of him. But what do you guys think of that? I mean, he is on top right now. Was it 13%?
I think Hans almost.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like he was going to get in.
Yeah.
You know, I thought he was. I don't want to say guaranteed a spot, but almost guaranteed a spot. And I had Hans and Evan up top, and that's kind of how it looks.
Yeah, it's all about relationships. This is Hans's 4th race for council. He's built a deep well of relationships throughout the county, and we're seeing that come to work today. I think he's also speaking to the huge breadth of candidates that we have. I mean, this year's ballot is incredibly dense and intimidating, but it speaks to how many people have been energized this year and what a great bench of well-qualified, thoughtful, intelligent candidates there are. And I deeply hope that a lot of them who don't make it this evening continue to be involved in this county, because we need their voices now more than ever.
Well, it's interesting with Hans is his campaign was sweating it for a while. I mean, with a name that starts with R, and but
way down there.
And I saw him today, and he said, "I'm the president of the council." And that makes a difference. Bill Hanna, who was on the council a long time ago, probably before the two of you were born, it seemed like every 4 years he would be elected president of the council to help him through. and eventually Phil Andrews defeated him when he wasn't looking. But being president of the council since December has given him a higher profile, which definitely makes a difference. So, and these people have run before. So the one to watch is Maryland, because if Maryland loses, all 4 will be men. All 4 will be men.
And all 4 will be from the southern part of the county. I mean, Gabe Albornoz, I think, and Will with the furthest north. Will lives off of Randolph Road. So it's Up County has been trying for years to get somebody elected to at large.
And we were talking about that in the last segment.
We were just talking about that.
And, again, Up County voters have to get out. And there aren't as many proportionally Democrats up county as there are Democrats down county.
Yeah.
And that takes care of it.
So, we've mentioned that we have some sound with voters that we got throughout the day. We went to polling places, and MCM stopped by polls in Tacoma Park to find out what voters there are really thinking about. And we found some serious-minded people with an eye on both local and national issues.
I live right here in Tacoma Park, Maryland. We want to select the best candidates in this primary so that we can have the best chance of running really strong candidates in the fall in the general election. For me, here in Montgomery County, we have a wonderful, wonderful county, but we really need to balance strong growth and stay with strong education. I feel very optimistic about Montgomery County. We have wonderful leadership. We have a great selection of candidates, and I'm really proud to live here.
I think there is a lot at stake right now. I think voting has always been important, but if the last election taught us anything, it is critical, and not just national elections. Local elections mean a lot, especially when your federal government has failed you. I don't have a most important issue. I think there's a lot of things that are critically important. The issues that drove me to vote are education, criminal justice reform, which I think that our state failed us a little bit this past session, immigration, and smart development that doesn't box out everybody who is not sort of wealthy or on the road to wealthy. I think there's a lot at stake with the coming of the purple line, this courting of Amazon, and all these kinds of things. We've already seen our housing prices go through the roof, and it's not livable anymore. And so I don't want to see development at the cost of people's ability to live and work and thrive and enjoy all the things that people with money get to enjoy.
I helped voted because I don't like Donald Trump.
That is true. I think that these next few years are going to make a big difference, a crucial difference. It's one of the reasons that I voted. Like I said, there's a lot of courting of development. There's a lot of conversation about, what wages should be, what housing prices should be, how we build fair housing, how do we develop a county in a way that is open and accessible. And I think, who ends up in office is going to determine that future. And so I really think we're at a critical point. We're either going to reverse this trend of, everything towards the most expensive houses and the most expensive living, and develop in a way that makes it livable for people, or, we're going to get to a place where we might as well be Potomac or Bethesda, like the bastion of millionaires and nobody else.
So, Tacoma Park voter there with strong views. Do you think those two want the same thing?
I think so. I think the strong economy is integral to supporting all of the progressive things we hold near and dear, all the services that we provide, our quality school system. And I also think that, the cost of housing is really integral to that. We need people to be able to afford to live here and build lives here. I'm 30 years old. I grew up in this county. I want to put down roots here. And when I went to the polls, I spent a long time thinking about who was actually going to support that. And that wasn't the main issue in this election, but it certainly was just below the radar, the cost of housing. And I think at times it did even eclipse the normal discussion about development and its impact on schools and roads. I would like to think people are starting to understand that we actually do have to grow, and if we want to make room for our kids and for people moving to the county, we actually have to build houses here.
And what I find most interesting in this topic with development is, if you look at Montgomery County, it is an aging population. And our county earns a lot of its money from property taxes. We cannot continue to continually increase that, although the last one was, I think, the last property tax increase was the cause of the discontent and the term limits. But as we talk about development, you cannot depend on this senior population as they retire to keep raising taxes on them. If we don't grow the business base in our county, this county is gone. We won't have education or social services. And I think it's naive, and it is the Tacoma Park view that all development is bad. Amazon, if we were so lucky to get it, is 50,000 jobs. They're all, most of them over 100,000. We need jobs. We need businesses to expand. And yes, that may include some traffic, but we have to be realistic. And I never understand how people say, we need to take care of the poor, the needy, the immigrants. The one woman said, we want more diversity, but how the heck are we going to pay for it unless we get a grip on it? And that was kind of the difference in the county executive race. Yep. Blair versus Elridge. And that is going to be the issue. And I find it ironic, which I said during the break, is Larry Rosenblum was Mr. Leggett's treasurer, and now he's Mr. Blair's treasurer.
It's been really interesting to see how Mark Elridge has tried to respond to this by sort of softening some of his views on development and business, which is, it's funny, for 30 years he's been in office and he's ran on a very strident anti-development message, and it's like watching somebody who was endorsed by the NRA.
Are you including?
Saying he's for gun control. Like it's a tough road to hoe, and and I'm curious to see if voters are actually going to respond to that.
Where do you get his 30 years in office?
He was in Tacoma Park City Council before he was in County Council.
Not that long. He hasn't 30 years. He ran.
My apologies.
Yeah, he ran 5 times before he got a seat on the county.
He's been around for a long time. Can we agree on that?
Yes. Yeah, he's been around a long time, but he ran 5 times before he got elected to the council because people were hesitant. And the 5th time when he thought he was going to, he said, Susan, I'm going to win. I have name recognition. And I said, after 5 times, Mark, if you don't have name recognition, who will? And here he is, heading.
Very close to being the county executive.
Yeah.
And
it could go either way.
It can.
Yeah, look, we have the results still on your screen there. Mark Elrich
is 1 point behind.
Yeah, 1 point behind David Blair. They're 29%, 28%, and then Rose Krasnow down to 15, and then Roger Berliner down there at 14. So,
wow,
very close. County Council at Large, Hans Reamer, who we talked about, 13. Will Juwando, 10. Evan Glass, Gabe Alvarez at 8. Tied. Some close ones so far.
It continues to be a mess.
And I heard today from a David Blair person that he thought millennials were going to vote for David Blair because they feel everybody, and they included Rose and Blair and Frick in there, who don't have as many years elected. But they lump them in with the 3 county council people saying, we want someone who isn't part of the problem. But then when you look at someone with no political experience, one could look to the White House and say, look at what can happen if you don't have political experience without having any.
Well,
there we are.
That's why David Blair had to, separate himself from the president
he had
after
a specific
that campaign ad.
Just for that, just to separate himself from the president.
Because Roger Berliner also ran the ad where he was transposing their heads.
But he's also managed to keep it pretty positive. It's very easy when you're running against the establishment to sort of just rail against that. And Bill Frick, I think, tried to make that his goal. And David Blair just sort of sailed above it, like this is what I want to do, and here's what I'm about. And I think voters are responding to that.
Do you know what's interesting too is Roger Berliner, I believe, really felt he was going to have the lane that David Blair had. The business candidate, because that's been his lane. And then David Blair came along, and in the last few days, he put out things like said, I'd like you to vote for me, but vote for anybody but David Blair.
Dan, Alex, thank you so much for
being
with us tonight. Very insightful. We enjoyed you very much. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and when we return, Susan and I will be joined by another pair of Maryland political insiders, so stay tuned.
MCM, your community media center, is making Montgomery County a great place to live through programs like Small Business Network. Host Kelly Leonard brings small business leaders together to learn, network, and prosper. Montgomery Community Media. Our middle name is community.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
Why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. Yeah, I get it.
This election year, Montgomery County encourages all residents from all walks of life to come out and vote.
Je vote.
I vote.
मैं मतदान देता हूँ.
أنا أعطي صوتي.
Ma vote halsu.
Please check these dates for early voting and the general election.
Yo voto.
我投票
I vote.
We encourage everyone to come out and vote.
I vote.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Montgomery Community Television's live primary election night coverage. I'm Kristen Wright. Thanks so much for being with us this evening. We have some really interesting races so far, some interesting results that are already coming into us. And I want to first introduce you to our new panel. We have kind of a rotating set of guests throughout the evening. Still with me now is MCM political commentator Susan Heltemez, and we're now joined by two people who certainly know a lot about politics in Montgomery County. We have Tracy Terrell. She's a political activist as well as a former president of the Black Democrats of Montgomery County. And we also have joining us John Herson. And John is the former majority leader of the Maryland House of Delegates and a Tacoma Park native. So Tracy and John, thank you and welcome for being with us. And first, before we get to our conversation, I think it's important that we take a look at some of the new results coming in. And I think first we have county executive here, and David Blair on top there at 29%. Now, was it flipped a few minutes ago?
It's been flipping,
right? It's flipping back and forth. So now David Blair 29%, Mark Elrich there at 28%, Rose Krasnow remains third, 15%, Roger Berliner 13, or Rose 15, Roger Berliner 13, George Leventhal 4. Moving on now to County Council at Large. Hans Riemer still there at the top, 12%. Will Jawando, this one I think has remained the same since last time in terms of the order. Hans Riemer,
Yep.
Will Jawando, yes. Evan Glass, 8%. Yes, and Gabe Alvarez there at 8% as well. Board of Education at Large, there are many, 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 many candidates. Julie Riley, 32% there, close behind. Carla Silvestri there, down a little lower. John Robertson at 11%. And then Mara Omar Ibrahim down there at 9%. So
the top two are in a runoff then in the fall, right? The top two
yes.
go to the
It's important to
ballot
note.
in the fall.
Correct, on the school board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tracy and John, so far, do you see any surprises? What do you think?
I think in the county council at large spot, I'm a little surprised at how well Marilyn Balcom is doing. I didn't expect her to be quite that high, but
well, she got the Washington Post endorsement.
She did get the Washington Post endorsement.
So
is that it?
Yep.
You think
And
that's
in
what it
the end, the Up County was pushing her. Women's groups were pushing her. And when you look at all those top four, they're all men. A lot of women came out and vote. I would have thought she'd been a little higher.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Susan. I would think that of the four, there are four open spots, but obviously you had one incumbent. But three really open spots, you would have thought that a woman would have been selected given that. So that is kind of surprising when you think about it.
I mean,
there are other women now, though, still on the county council.
Nancy Navarro will be back.
She will be back.
But that will be the only
one left on the council if this holds up.
And if the Democrats continue to win all the seats in the fall.
Correct.
But that's it, one.
Yeah.
And
that's not a lot.
No.
But you know, and I'm surprised we haven't seen anything in County Council District 1, because there are multiple women running there, and that is a race that would be interesting to look at.
There we go. County Council District 1.
Yep.
Andrew Friedson, 29%. Anna Sol Gutierrez at 21% there, and I didn't see the others.
Anna is second.
She's second.
And who are the other ones? What was the order again?
And I believe Reggie Oldeck was third, correct?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Again, it looks like a man is going to pull it off. And Meredith and Pete Fosselman both have planning backgrounds. So we're not going to have a planner there.
Yep.
Yep.
Guys, Hans Riemer is standing by right now, and he is going to talk to us about his bid for the at-large seat in County Council. So let's listen.
All right, we have a little bit of news so far. What do you think? What's the vibe here at Quarry House?
Well, people here are really excited. It's been a very vigorous campaign. Lots going on. A lot of great people running. And of course, these are my friends and supporters. So everyone's buzzing. We're really happy about the results today. And we're watching the returns come in. There's a lot of races that are still to be decided.
You mentioned it's a large pool. We have probably an unprecedented number of people running for county council. What do you think of that? Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it was great. You know, there's so many great people who have run for the council. This is the next generation of leadership. And, you know, a lot of times when people run, they stick around and they run again. And those are the future leaders of our community. So I'm really happy about all the people who've come in, and we'll see who wins, and we'll see who's, you know, coming back next time.
So we have term limits now. So if that's going to change the face of the government in Montgomery County, what do you think about that? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Well, you know, I don't think term limits is good. I don't think it's good because, you know, when you want your government to achieve something for the community, you need elected officials who are effective and can get the job done. And so sometimes you really need experience in order to achieve those kind of goals. So I don't think it's helpful, but it is what it is. It's here. It's a reality. We have a lot of people coming in as a result. You know, there's new blood coming into the county leadership, and we'll see how that plays out over time.
So far, the news is pretty good. So if you do indeed win tonight, what are your plans for the next 4 years? What, do you have some agenda items you want to continue, some new items you want to introduce? What do you have planned?
Well, you know, so much is going on. First of all, we got a very busy summer at the council, right? We got a busy summer and a busy fall. So there's going to be a lot of legislation. But, you know, looking forward to the next 4 years, focusing on educational opportunity, housing affordability, economic development, transportation infrastructure. You know, we've got so many big needs in this community. We've got to press forward. We've got to meet the challenges of our future. We've got to embrace the smart growth vision that we need to have. And we've got a lot to do. So it's an exciting time.
Great. Thanks so much for having us here, and have a good rest of the night. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay,
He
so
sounds like a confident man.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Looking forward to the next 4 years.
And what's interesting is someone said today, it's taken him 2 terms to hit his stride, but he has hit his stride, and this is a totally different guy than even 4 years ago.
Yep.
And
much more confident.
And he is
much more confident.
He'll be. They're able to take a leadership role.
Yeah, he's going to be able to have, you know, a lot of new members of the council to give some leadership to. I mean, that's an important role to have. With a new county executive, you know, having some experience there is pretty important. So,
so we have we heard?
Yeah, I think this is the first time we're seeing District 2 results coming in. It looked like Craig Rice was leading the pack there.
He should easily take that district.
Yeah.
Not a problem there.
Yeah.
But and District 1 is the only one really to watch tonight.
Yeah, it's not really close though, even in District 1.
And it looks like Sid Katz is
Oh, there we go.
Looks like Sid Katz is holding on.
Yeah, but it's not that, I mean, it's, you know, there's still lots of votes to be counted, but it's fairly close.
Well, it was a tough race. I mean, there was some serious, you know, challenges to hit
And
there,
in the end, I think a lot of people rallied around him because he was the adult in the room a lot of the time, and he has a memory, an institutional memory and experience, having been the mayor of Gaithersburg, that, you know, thank God there'll be one of them on the council, and he knows how to legislate, and he is going to play a valuable role in there, especially if a lot of younger people win.
Right.
He's going to be the senior. Marilyn Praisner used to play this role. She would come in and be, and she worked very hard, and Sid works very hard, and she's going to be the grown-up in the room, the elder statesman who can, I think, take lead in his own way.
Yeah, and I don't think we should underestimate the fact that the council is actually going to have more experience in terms of a couple of the leaders on the council than the new county executive. I mean, if it is David Blair, I mean, you're going to have the council actually probably take more of a forward role because they'll understand the levers much better than the county executive if it's David Blair.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but that could certainly happen, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
it could.
It could happen if it holds the way it is tonight. I mean, you've got Craig Rice coming back. You have Nancy Navarro coming back, probably. Hans Reamer. Sid Katz. I mean,
they're going to know, and one of the interesting things about the council is the council really controls the development agenda. I mean, they're more in power than the county executive is on development issues.
And they appoint the
Park and
Planning
Commissioner. So, I mean, the fact that you've got some veterans still on the council, and if it's David Blair, you know, as the county executive, that'll be an interesting dynamic between the council and the
also
county
with a new executive is, who does he bring with him to county government?
Correct.
And well, and the same could be said for Mark Elridge.
Right.
You know, nobody knows who they're going to bring with them, and
the interesting thing, though, if it was or is going to be Mark Elridge, you know, he's got the background of years on the council, which would give him more of an ability to interact with veterans on the council. But really, with somebody like David Blair, it's going to be a really different dynamic.
And we talked about last time that Mark may have political expertise, but he's never led the council. He has no executive experience.
He's never been the president.
He's never been the president of the council.
Never. And David Blair is a political neophite.
Yeah.
So you just don't know. Either one of them. Montgomery County is going to wake up tomorrow.
Neither of them, from my experience, had any interaction with the legislature, you know, in Annapolis. They don't have, neither of them have those connections, which are really vital to this
And
county.
we've talked a lot about this. And someone today was saying that they thought that Ben Jealous would be a great governor because he could work with the federal government. And I went, you know what, I really want a governor who can work, first of all, with the counties and communicate with them.
Right.
And
with the legislature.
And with the legislature.
And so now we could have a lot of new people everywhere who've never worked with anybody. And you know what someone said today? Depending on what's going to happen to these, you know, that retirement place we're talking about in North Carolina looks really good. And so who knows? You know, North Carolina, watch out. But I think there is going to be, among the old-time people around, there's going to be new blood hitting town. Again, though, I'm worried about the planning part. It appears that no one with planning experience is going to be around.
It's going to make it through.
And that's critical.
Yeah. Well, we only have 30 seconds before the break, but we can continue after the break. But I wonder, having said all that, now what if Ben Schneider does win that seat? Does that completely, then there's no veteran there?
We will have a 27-year-old who has no experience.
Yeah. All right, let's continue after the break. We're going to come back in just a moment with more election results, so stay with us.
This election year, Montgomery County encourages all residents from all walks of life to come out and vote.
Je vote.
I vote.
मैं मतदान देता हूँ.
أنا أعطي صوتي.
मैं वोट डालूँ.
Please check these dates for early voting and the general election.
Yo voto.
我投票.
I vote.
We encourage everyone to come out and vote.
I vote.
I felt the bite at age 16.
I felt the bite at age 4.
We've all felt the bite of Charcot-Marie Tooth, and we are fighting back.
Charcot-Marie Tooth is the most commonly inherited nerve disease. If you or a loved one has CMT, go to cmtausa.org and help take a bite out of CMT.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be blood. Next Thursday?
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day. I have no time for this. So.
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
MCM, your community media center, is making Montgomery County a great place to live through programs like 21 This Week. Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show keeps you up to date with the local political scene. Montgomery Community Media. Our middle name is Community.
You're watching Montgomery Community Television's live primary election night coverage. I'm your host, Kristen Wright. Thanks so much for being with us. And we have some more election results that we want to show you. But before we do that, we want to reintroduce you to our panel. Susan is still here with us. And we also have Montgomery County political activist Tracy Terrell and former Maryland House of Delegates Majority Leader John Herson. So Tracy and John, thanks again. Good conversation so far. So let's take another look at the election results that we're seeing so far tonight. What time is it? 10:15. Let's take a look. County Executive David Blair there on top, 29%. Mark Elrich closely behind at 28%. And I think that's sort of expected. I don't know that there's any surprises there.
It's holding. With absentees, provisionals.
Right.
But historically, it's usually been that absentees tend to stay
tend to break the same way as
no big surprises there usually. But this is an unusual year.
It's unusual, but what we expected at the same time. County Council at large, Hans Reamer 12%, Will Jawando 10%. This has stayed the same too. This is holding steady. Yeah, holding steady for sure. And there are the long list of names there. But you know, we have not talked about the governor's race. Here are the Board of Education at large seats as well. Julie Riley, 32%. Here we go.
That one's over.
We had wanted to talk about the governor's race here. Ben Jealous, the top, 39%. Rashern Baker, not too far behind at 31%. Jim Shea, farther down the list there at 8% there. So let's talk about the governor's race. John and Tracy, what do you make of those numbers so far?
Go ahead. You go first.
I think we knew that it was probably going to be between Ben Jealous and Rashern Baker. I think we thought it might be a little closer than it's sitting right now.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the way to look at this race is really, I hate to say it, but kind of the Democratic establishment was really with Rashern Baker. And you had Bernie and Kamala Harris and a lot of other people.
And Cory Booker and Phil and Ben.
So
and Ben
kind
and
of the more, if you will, the challenging part of the Democratic Party, you know, getting behind Ben Jealous, and they clearly have had a victory here. I mean, if it stays this way.
If it stays this way.
Which we don't know.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's in, because Ben tended to be more popular in the Baltimore area, whereas Rashern was
right. And we don't. When we're looking at those numbers, we don't know what's in. We don't know what percentage is in.
That's right.
You know, there could be a big group of votes still out of Prince George's County that we haven't seen yet. We just don't know.
Again, this was a matter of money. In the last few weeks, the PACs that were supporting Jealous were almost insurmountable, millions and millions of dollars, and much of his contributions came from out of state. Because of his NAACP ties, he got thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars from all over the country. In fact, I heard a joke that it was, you know, who is he going to be the governor of, California or Maryland? And it, for people who are on the inside, it does give us pause. We've never seen this before.
These were independent expenditures, so these were not actual donations to his campaign from California.
But he got a lot of those too.
But he got those too. But I'm just saying there was a lot of what we would call special interest money from very wealthy donors that were out of state.
Do you think that is because of the NAACP ties, or where is that?
No,
what's the connection?
If you'll recall, 2 years ago, it seems like it's impossible, but 2 years ago, he was one of the chief surrogates, along with Keith Ellison, for Bernie Sanders. And in a couple of weeks ago, there were 8 primaries. Bernie's people pretty much lost across the country. And the Bernie Sanders people reorganized and said, we're going to pull one out. And they looked to Maryland, felt he had the best chance, and money was dumped in. And, you know, Baker didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. Plus, you know, and you can't underestimate the unions, teachers, pretty much all the unions in the state endorsed him. And I had a conversation today with a union president, and I said, do you know what you're getting into if this were to happen? And there was, well, we're hoping for the best. And the sense is that he promised a lot of people a lot of things. Mr. Baker has the executive experience from Prince George's, who knew he had to say no occasionally. And we can talk about this with Nancy Florine, who's coming on, but I've heard her say on numerous occasions, the fiscal projections for the next year or two in Montgomery County and the state are pretty bad, based on the tax changes at the top. And we're going to really be hurting for money. And we have from Jealous promises for Medicare for all, for free college education, and he's going to pay for it with the legalization of cannabis. And I will tell you, people were talking about that legalization of cannabis today.
Were they?
Uh-huh.
You know, before we go on, I want to mention, we're talking about voters, and we spent the day catching up with people at polling sites, talking about what's important to you. And there's one that stood out, really, in our random sampling, and she was willing to share with us her reasons for voting today.
My name is Janet Dolan-Lieb, and I'm from right here in Bethesda. Grew up here, born here. I think that voting is so important, especially me being a Republican in a predominantly Democratic county or state. And I feel as though the Republicans are not representing themselves and their ideals and what they want. And considering that I grew up here, the change and is just becoming overwhelming, where I don't think it's going in the right direction for education and for our children and for our future. So that is why I'm here today. I think what is most important to me is fairness, equality, enhancing and really making our country strong, and to get rid of the division and have more the unity that we used to have. And that's why, again, I am here. I think the future of the county, if it continues to go the way that it is going now, does not look as bright as I would hope it would be. I think that it's becoming way too liberal, and honestly, that is not meant in any kind of social or racial bias, but I think it's becoming so liberal in the most ridiculous ways that I think that children are not benefiting educationally. I think some things are just outrageous. And so I'm voting to sort of make it, I don't want to say conservative, and I don't even want to say Republican, but my views are more family-oriented, are more education-oriented, are more success-oriented for the whole state. There you go. That's why I voted.
And it's ironic she said that being a Republican, because under Larry Hogan, the Republican, we have slipped from being #1 in education in the country to #6.
Well, she obviously feels that that's not his fault. So.
Obviously. do you know what's interesting? I was, as I said, at Leisure World today, and a Republican woman came up to the Republican table and was using profanity and ranting about she was upset with all the Democrats, why aren't there Republicans, literature, etc. And nobody knew what to say, and they stepped back, and I said, may I interject, ma'am? I said, there are no Republican primaries. There are no challengers in the Republican Party. This is, in essence, a Democratic Party. Yeah. And she looked at them and she said, why did you say that? She said, it makes sense then. And you know, but there were no choices. Right. So I don't know what that lady was voting for.
We don't know.
She had no choices. School board. And
board,
judges.
right.
And judges.
What, John and Tracy, what do you make of that fact that Susan points out? I mean, it's just there are.
You know, I think it's unfortunate that there isn't a stronger Republican Party in the county. I mean, there have been, through the years, there have been some very strong Republican leaders. Connie Morella is a good example.
Gil
Goody. I mean, when you go back,
Gene Ross or Gene
Pryor.
Pryor.
Those are the same
We both were like Gene Ross.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, they were great leaders, not just as Republicans, but leaders for the state. And I think that kind of Republican, to be honest about it, is disfavored now. We don't really have that strong, moderate Republican Party anymore, and I think that's a disadvantage to the state.
Well, across the nation, there's
this
conversation that it is.
We're not unusual in that regard.
Yeah, it's the party of Trump now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but that's true in Maryland, and it was true before Trump. That's what's sad. I mean, and there should be, and Susan knows this because she hosts the show on Channel 21. There are young Republican leaders, and they need to come up through their system. I don't think I think it would be a healthier political environment if we had a stronger Republican Party.
And the Republican candidate for county executive is Robin Ficker.
Yeah.
Now, Robin Ficker may be credited with term limits, and he was in the legislature for one term, but he is also known as the person who got kicked out, wasn't it, pretty much by the National Basketball League, and he's a joke.
Yeah.
And Republicans are embarrassed.
They should do a better job of selecting at least like a leader like that. The person running for county executive should not be Robin Ficker. They need.
But no one ran against him.
That's what I mean. I mean, they need to do a better job on that.
Well, and even still, I think it's kind of amazing that in the governor's race, there isn't a single person that is running against.
Well, in the governor's race, you got the governor. So
well, I mean, besides, against
but
the governor.
But you know, usually if you have the governor's race, most people are persuaded not to run. And the only one you might have is so superficial that they don't really have a no one in this state is going to challenge
It's
Hogan.
interesting that the strength that Hogan has, and he does have a lot of strength. It's going to be a very
71%.
It's going to be a very interesting race, whoever the Democratic nominee is. But the strength that Hogan has isn't being translated down to the county levels. Outside of the rural parts of the state, in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, you're probably going to get a Democratic county executive in Baltimore County, which can be a very Republican area. But his strength is very much related to his own personality, and that has not translated down into the Republican Party, unfortunately.
And he has a lot of Democratic supporters as
well.
Yes, he does.
And there would be those who say he hasn't done very much. Occasionally he'll do it, is to separate himself from Trump. When it's really egregious, he'll say something. But on the whole, he keeps it pretty low. And if you look at what his achievements are, there aren't any. Lowering tolls and giving us a free transponder for our cars isn't exactly a great thing. Oh, and I might add, he also delayed school until after Labor Day. And I was at something a couple weeks ago in Kensington, and a man got up and said, well, talking about Hogan, he said, and our kids don't have to go back to school till after Labor Day. And he was booed. In a room of Democrats, he was booed, and they said, there's nothing good about that. And he said, well, my kids like it. And everyone, it's terrible. What do we do with our kids for that extra week? So, what can I say?
All right. Okay. Well, Tracy Terrell and John Herson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
This was fun.
All right. When we come back, we'll update election results again, and then longtime County Council member Nancy Florine is going to join me and Susan with her thoughts on this primary election night. So stay tuned.
We have.
MCM, your community media center, is making Montgomery County a great place to live through programs like Montgomery Arts Infusion. Host Michael Bobbitt shows you the art and the artists who make Montgomery County unique. Montgomery Community Media, Our middle name is Community.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Getting that college education, what are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else? Or will you dare do something different? Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills. The smarts? Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget. That'd be cool. Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself? What are you gonna make of me? Testing. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
This election year, Montgomery County encourages all residents from all walks of life to come out and vote.
Je vote.
I vote.
मैं मतदान देता हूँ.
أنا أعطي صوتي.
ما بوت حالته.
Please check these dates for early voting and the general election.
Yo voto.
我投票。
I vote.
We encourage everyone to come out and vote.
I vote.
Watching Montgomery Community Television's live primary election night coverage. I am your host, Kristen Wright. And so we have been following all of the biggest races that you have been thinking about for the past long while. And we want to bring you a look at those results right now. And before we do that, I think we want to introduce a very special person that we have with us tonight. Susan is still here with us, but we're excited to welcome current Montgomery County Council Member at Large, Nancy Florine. Thank you for being with us tonight. It's really nice to have you here. Let's look at the results before we talk. County Executive first, David Blair, 29%, right at the top there, tied with Mark Elrich. They've been neck and neck pretty much all evening. Rose Krasnow still there, third, 15%. Roger Berliner just after her at 13. I think I said 13. Rose was 15. Yeah. Roger Berliner, 13. County Council at Large, take a look. Hans Remer, and this has remained the same all evening. Yeah. Hans Remer there at the top at 12%. Will Jawando, 10%. Evan Glass at 8%, pretty much neck and neck with Gabe Albornoz there. So, this is the rest of the crowded field. Board of Education at Large, Julie Riley, 32%. District 1, County Council District 1, Andrew Friedson, 28%. Anna Sol Gutierrez, Reggie Oldak, third there. County Council District 2, Ed Amiet-Teddy, Tom Berleman, and Kyle Sefcik. So
that's Republicans, yeah.
Results are Craig Rice there. As we mentioned earlier, he, I think, will win handily there. 73%. Sydney Katz and Ben Schneider still about, I think, about the same as a little while ago. That's another one to watch closely, I think. So welcome. And thanks so much. What do you make of everything you've seen so far tonight?
I'm really looking forward to the next council meeting. We'll see. Of course, if the numbers hold for Blair, he's ahead of Mark by, last I looked, by about 600 votes. That's pretty tight. My experience, though, in these historically, these numbers tend to hold. Yeah. But you know, we'll see. That's the edgy one. And gosh, no more women at large for a while.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
That's really very unfortunate, I think.
Women lost big tonight, are losing big.
Well, just being a woman doesn't get you anything. I could have told you that.
Somehow I knew that, Nancy. I think we've discussed that a few times.
It's a fact of life I've experienced over my tenure. it's really interesting. So what's the message here? We want new people. I mean, if David Blair wins, that is really something. I also look to see that David Trone appears to be to own the 6th Congressional.
He does too?
Yeah.
We haven't seen that race.
Yeah, we haven't looked at that.
So that's interesting as well.
Money those 2 races.
Well, it doesn't hurt, and it's people don't think that that is such a deterrent, obviously. For the council, what this is showing, what's really changing, it's changed bit by bit, but what we're getting, the people that we are getting on the council are not the kind of folks we used to have so much from the civic background, from the land use background. The new members are unused to what we actually deal with.
Yeah.
Which a lot of land use stuff, although we've done a lot in the past few years. I think we've wrapped it pretty much for the next council for the time being. We deal with a lot of hard issues, and I'm not sure that they appreciate that it isn't so easy. We just did a fiscal plan for the county going forward, and the rate of revenue growth that we anticipate is pretty minuscule compared to our ongoing obligations. So how that's going to be managed, both by the council and a new executive, is going to be really, really interesting. And with new people, particularly if it's David Blair, this is a whole new world for him.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to learn the mechanics of how things work. Plus,
the politics of the whole.
Well, it's interesting. Plus, you're going to want to look at the legislative results. We are losing the people who were in the room. Sheila Hickson, Rich Madaleno. They were in there fighting for Montgomery County.
And
gone by this election.
If Rich had stayed in there, he'd be the chair of budget.
So what does that mean for Montgomery County? The battle is going to be all about money, money, money next year. It's going to be about the Kerwin Commission report and how are we going to split the baby? How big is the baby going to be, and who gets what? And if we don't have a team that sticks together in Annapolis that really fights for Montgomery County, that's going to be really interesting. And, the rest of the state still really believes that our streets are paved with gold. And I used to think, they'd get over it. Well, last time I was testifying there, it was very clear that was the reaction of legislators from across the state. So the Montgomery County delegation has to prove and demonstrate that the streets are not paved with gold. And that's a challenge, going to be a challenge, because everyone's been running on this progressive ticket.
Right.
That involves spending a lot of money.
And
how is that going to work with Annapolis and Montgomery County's growing needs?
And
it's going to be really quite a
to
challenge.
Throw in, the next thing, that if the numbers hold and Ben Jealous is elected governor, he knows nothing about nothing.
Well, I think if Ben Jealous wins tonight, Mr. Hogan will continue.
Yeah.
That's I think.
And I just
universal
want
view.
to say, I want to interject here. Nancy is so unique and is so well loved. Nancy and I go back a long time to the early 80s. But
we do.
What I want to say about Nancy is so well respected, and there was a hope among a lot of people in the county that she would have run for county exec. And had she run, I am confident that David Blair wouldn't be in the race. And I think we could be looking at our county executive. She chose not to do that. And as a result, it appears we're going to have a man again for county executive. But I think that was a loss. But, Nancy has a right to walk away from office.
Well,
any regrets or rethoughts?
Time for a break.
That?
No, I'm not feeling jealous. Look, listen to the voters. I've got to say, I really did take the term limits vote personally.
Yeah.
Not so much that I had planned to run again for this job, but I think it was a statement of the community. They wanted a different approach to things. Now, we'll see if the numbers hold the way they're shown now. They made that decision. And I think that's something for everyone to remember. The great thing about being an at-large member of the county council is there's always someone in Montgomery County who agrees with you. You know, we represent a large percent of the, well, we represent all members of the community, all of who have different points of view and perspectives. And I got to tell you, this whole county is not the world of Tacoma Park. The other thing I was going to say about these election results, that this is going to lessen the hold of Tacoma Park on Montgomery County decision making. I don't know where Will Joando lives.
I think
probably Silver Spring someplace, but I don't know.
Yes, I believe so. And
does he
Evan,
live in Tacoma Park?
No, but Evan
Glass lives. I know where he lives. It's not in Tacoma Park per se.
But
I mean, I have 3 colleagues who can carpool easily.
Yes, but he lives in Silver Spring too, and Gabe is in Kensington.
Yeah.
So
still, well, and that's the shame. Bless them all. What I was really hoping that Marilyn would make it, because the upcounty,
she still could.
Maybe. You know, no offense to the rest of them, but the upcounty is woefully unrepresented.
And we talked about this earlier,
Yeah,
that
we did.
they don't have the same numbers of Democrats.
Well, you know, and that the real question is, what are the numbers? Is our turnout exceeding the awful percentages of 2014, where we were at 17%? I've seen the numbers that I've seen so far. You know, in 14, I think I needed 57,000 votes.
We haven't seen
to make
any
it.
numbers.
Well, the numbers exist, but I think they're pretty low. But of course, they're split every which way, so it's hard to tell.
And
I'm hearing, I'm sorry, I'm a bit distracted. I'm hearing that we may hear from David Blair any second now. So we're kind of standing by to hear from him live. And we know that he obviously is doing very well tonight. So just know that we may just suddenly break.
I had a good chat with him this morning.
Fairy. Tooth Fairy. He remembers to be the Tooth Fairy. That was my big line. And I couldn't remember that. He is the father to our children. He's my husband. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the next county executive.
Wow. Wow, that was worth the price of admission. Thank you. We got a barn burner tonight, don't we? Oh my goodness. So 8 months ago, we were unknown and a huge underdog, and now we're in a fight for our lives in a neck-and-neck race. And so we don't know the outcome yet, but we have so much to celebrate. And let me tell you why. We're going to celebrate our friendships, so many old ones and so many new ones. We're going to celebrate our diversity. Just look around this room. We assembled a team from not all around the county, not all around the country, but from around the world, and we brought them here, and from that diversity, we got the best ideas. And we're going to celebrate our integrity. When our competitors went negative, and they did, and again, we didn't follow. We held our heads up high. We will all sleep well knowing that we ran an extremely positive campaign focused on the issues that matter most.
Okay, so David Blair there at his headquarters, sounding very confident, but still neck and neck, right? I mean, as far as we understand.
I don't know how many precincts are reporting yet, and what the break is.
Right.
But I think they're getting close to the finals.
Yeah, it's, I mean, as we've been talking about all evening, Blair and Elrich have been close, but again, we don't know the number of precincts reporting at this point. Oh, here we go. This is what we have. Don't know the number of precincts reporting, but neck and neck with.
Well, that's putting Mark on top,
Elrich.
so.
Yeah.
We'll see.
29%. Okay,
well,
I'm being told last we heard it was with 58%.
Can we see the rest
reporting.
of the exec candidates just to get a sense of where they are in the pecking order now?
Okay, WTOP is reporting these are the results with 79% of precincts reporting. So
yeah.
It's close, it's tight. But that was David Blair there live at his headquarters talking about how far he's come. And Nancy Florine has been, have been talking about how he has managed to come
heard
this
of David
far
Blair
without
8
any
months
name
ago.
recognition
He's right.
before.
We didn't. And it's amazing when you have that kind of money.
Very interesting. Well, it's a tribute to the Washington Post, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The endorsement.
And, he had the resources to put into this. That's makes a difference. All that advertising.
Yeah, it does. It does make a big difference.
And he had a lot of workers out there working for him. It all matters.
It does.
The thing about campaigning is everyone will argue about what you should spend your money on, and no one will ever agree on what it is that you need. Do you need to spend more money on TV, mail, knocking on doors, staffing, phone call, you name it. Everyone will argue about. There is no clear path these days, and because there's really only one print press left, and if the newsprint dries up, we'll see what happens with that, with the Trump activity, but tariffs. But where do people get their information? Nobody really knows.
But if you have money, you can do everything, and it's a crapshoot. And he was able to do that.
Well, Susan, you even said that your neighbor had a new
door
knocker
today. Yep, they weren't home, so they got one. And it's interesting. The literature came endlessly, and there was one Democrat who was very irate at the poll today, and she said, "I'm switching to the Republican Party because I am fed up with all the phone calls." She said, "I know I won't get phone calls if I switch to the Republican Party." And I said to her, "Well, you're probably right, ma'am." But it was a little overwhelming, and people did talk about the trees today. And and that is a problem because people were so overwhelmed. I received today when I got home, polls were almost closed, 7 pieces of literature. Yesterday, 15.
Yeah.
And
well, what are you going to do? People complain to me, and I say, well, what would you suggest? How do we get information to you? And as it is, frankly, the mail doesn't tell you very much about the candidate. They certainly don't. They never tell you where they went to school. They don't even tell you where they live, except presumably in the district that where they're running for the job.
But
and what's the relevant material that you really need to make a decision? For everyone, it's different.
Yeah.
Obviously, gender isn't the driving force. And I'm not sure wealth is. Honestly, I think that's what people like to pick at. But I think that people, I think largely, want to support someone that they believe represents their views, or someone who they feel they can trust to make the right decision.
But Nancy, I think in light of what happened 2 years ago in other parts of the country, women made a difference, and quite, I'm appalled at the lack of women. I mean, I give Anna Salt credit. She's been around a long time. She came second in that race, which I find quite frankly, I'm surprised by that. But who did women vote for today? That's what I would like to know.
I do want to get to, before we go, to campaign finance, because that's another important issue that's been on the table. So the way candidates finance their election campaigns is new in Montgomery County. In 2014, a county council set a minimum amount for candidates to raise before qualifying to run and limited individual campaign contributions. So candidates who agree with the new system and who meet these criteria qualify to receive matching funds from a taxpayer-funded system. So those who chose not to participate continue to raise money the traditional way. So this primary election is the first time candidates have used the new system. Our senior reporter Doug Tallman talked to Phil Andrews, one of the people who championed the change. Take a listen.
What are your thoughts about how public election financing has worked out this time around?
Well, I think it's gotten off to a good start because a lot of people are using it. There are, I think, 22 candidates that have qualified for public financing. There were a number that tried but didn't make it. And most of the incumbents on the council who are running for something, 8 of the 9 are running for something, and about half of the challengers running for county council or county executive are using public financing. There's public financing to be used in every one of the district council races. There's at least one candidate that has qualified. In the at-large race, about a dozen of the 33 Democratic candidates have qualified, and 3 of the 6 Democratic candidates for county executive have qualified for public financing. So it's getting well used. Incumbents and challengers are using it, and Republicans have qualified too, like Mr. Amateti in District 2. So I think that's good. And the other things are that there's been a huge increase in the number of small donors in these elections. Common Cause did a study a few months ago after the annual reports were filed in January that showed a big increase in the number of small donors. And of course, that is expected because you can only have small donors if you're seeking to qualify for public funding. But that's the goal of the measure, is to empower individual residents of the county and to encourage, incentivize candidates to go seek them out. And they're doing that. So it has really changed how a number of candidates have run for office. Candidates like George Leventhal, who's running for county executive, have talked about how different it is to be running under this system than the old system.
And since you mentioned county executive race, you've got at least one person who is just writing himself a check with David Blair. I mean, how would public election financing counteract a candidate like that?
Well, what it does is it gives the rest of the field the opportunity to get their message out. It's not meant to provide candidates with exactly the same amount of money that someone else has, but the system was designed to give candidates enough money to run a competitive campaign. So just like when Abraham Lincoln was asked how long should a man's legs be, he thought and said, long enough to reach the ground. So that's the idea with this. There should be enough money available through public funding to enable a candidate to run a viable campaign for whatever office they're seeking. And the other thing is that there is no limit on what a candidate can raise or spend. So unlike many public financing systems that have a hard cap on what a candidate can raise and spend, there is no limit theoretically on what a candidate can raise or spend. A candidate can raise as many $150 contributions as they possibly can. So they can attempt to keep up with a big donor or with a self-funded candidate or with a candidate that's getting huge amounts of money from a special interest. So that was the goal, not to try to match what a privately financed candidate or a candidate with deep pockets might spend.
All right, so we're curious to know if you agree with that assessment of this first year of campaign.
Well, if your goal is to get more people to run, that goal has been achieved. If you look at the headliners, I'm not so sure it makes a huge difference. I'm not sure about the for the at-large candidates. I think Gabe. I think they all. Let's see, Gabe, Will Juando, Evan, and Hans. They were all using public financing. So
there you go.
Would they have
and
done
Maryland
it?
wasn't.
Maryland wasn't. The private money may or may not be available. You can't count on it. I mean, it certainly worked for them. For county exec, looks like Mark's on the, Mark and Blair are neck and neck.
Neck and neck.
If not exactly tied at this moment, and I'm wondering if we're going to go into July 10th to find out the real answer to the.
And Andrew Friedson, who is leading in District 1.
That was private money.
That was private money, and he had a lot of it.
Yeah.
Here are the results, and as you said, Nancy, Mark Elrick, and David Blair completely neck and neck. We understand Blair is ahead by 70 votes.
Something like that. Of course, not all the precincts are in yet.
Right.
And we may be looking at the provisionals and absentees.
Right, we're hearing
and
nearly 90% of precincts reporting.
Yeah.
So
that's
very,
very close.
Very close.
So more public money went into this. It's hard to say what would have happened without it. I think we would have had fewer candidates, but we have a lot of candidates with low percentage numbers, and
but those top 4 did take public financing.
Yeah.
And Maryland
but
didn't.
Hans didn't do it before. He didn't have to. I don't know that the others would have not managed otherwise. I don't know. It's hard to prove the negative in all of this.
So here are the county council at large numbers, which have remained consistent through the
I
whole
think
evening.
that's done.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't think it's going to change. Yeah, all men.
And
so
it's
poor
so
old Nancy
interesting.
Navarro, but she's going to be the next president.
Is she?
Yeah. For
Are
next
you
year.
announcing tonight?
Huh?
No,
I
thought
just
you were
she'll be
going
the
to
next president of the
Nancy.
county council.
Yeah.
No.
Well, she's one of the few with some experience.
Yeah, well.
And have we heard anything lately about what's happening in the Sid Katz
Oh
race?
yes, that was one we were watching. That was pretty close as well. I think that Katz was just ahead by
like
a few percentage. There it is. It's about the same as it was.
Yeah,
before.
yeah, I think so. Will be fine.
I think yes
let's
too.
see here. What do I have on this?
Cindy Katz,
little bit.
53%.
Yeah.
Schneider, 47. Here are the governor's
He's
race.
ahead by 700 votes. It's not a huge amount.
700 votes. That's not a lot.
10%.
No,
That's not a lot.
But
notice this, 10%.
That's not a lot. So Ben Jealous, 40% here. Rashern Baker, 30%. Jim Shea, 8% there.
well, there you go, Mr. Hogan. And be very happy in Republican headquarters.
That could be decided at this point. But I guess we don't know for sure at this point.
I think that is pretty much over.
Yep. So there you have it.
Very interesting.
Interesting.
I think Nancy has a very cogent comment in that that's what I was hearing today at the polls, that if Ben Jealous were to win, he is so far to the left, and that 4 years ago or 2 years ago, Hillary Clinton did carry Montgomery County, and that maybe that means the more mainstream Democrats, and that Ben Jealous did not fare so well. With the infusion of money and the enthusiasm of unions, he carried the vote. But come November, Marylanders, Democrats are not, on the whole, that extreme. And I think it's going to take a small miracle for Hogan to be defeated. However, I believe it's tomorrow that the gubernatorial candidates are going to meet at state party headquarters. Maybe it's the next day. And at some time ago, they all made a promise that they would all support the winner, no matter who the winner was. Will that come through? And will there be a uniform message and unilateral support? It could make a difference. You know, depending on what happens in the White House till then, that could make a difference.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Democrats were soliciting volunteers at the polls today for November. The problem in Montgomery County, as you know, Susan, is that we tend to fold up our tents after the primary here because our decisions are made today. And the larger races, we don't always get out the troops for that. I know Kathleen Matthews has been working to encourage people to stay involved and engaged. And, you know, wounds will be licked over the next month or two. But come
Resumes
September,
will be sent out
come
quickly.
September, people will get their act together. But at the end of the day, let's be honest, the Republican Party, the National Party, is going to put in big money in Maryland to keep Hogan in. And can those California people who financed the Jealous campaign keep paying? That's going to be the question. I mean, they put $1 million in the past week or so, which I, you know, kind of mind. They're not my neighbors, you know. There's someone who like Ben, so that'd be interesting. Good for Susie. At least we've got a Montgomery County person in the game here, and that's always a good thing. Yeah.
It is going to be interesting. There are outsiders and there's money, and I think that was a very interesting story tonight. And women lost.
All right. Well.
Oh, well.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Onward.
So much. Yes, thank you for being with us tonight. That's all we have time for, so we thank you sincerely for your perspective and for your service. And we thank all of our panelists here tonight for this important discussion about this election and the future of Montgomery County and what it all means. And of course, thank you to Susan Haltemans for being such a wonderful resource for MCM and to the county when it comes to understanding our politics here in the county. MCM would also like to thank our PEG partners for all the support they have given to this coverage and particularly to this broadcast this evening. So be sure to stay with mymcmedia.org for the latest election results and coverage tonight and tomorrow. So we thank you so much for watching and for supporting MCM. Good night.